This episode of the Seventh Valkyrie Podcast is brought to you entirely by fan support. To help keep the series ad-free, get early access and bonus features, browse gear and apparel, join the community, or watch the series come to life in living color, you can check out the links in the description. Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Seventh Valkyrie Podcast. Welcome. And I figured I'd just get into it today. My usual intro is sort of joyful and light, and this is a topic that's a little bit less so. And it's, if you saw the title, it's where do we put the darkness? And so that's a little bit of a weird question, and I wanted to kind of provide some context. I believe that there are light and airy and joyful and colorful and happy things in everyone, but I also believe that kind of strangely deep within all of us lies the kind of darkness and savagery left over from a more brutal time where we had to be really a lot more willing to engage with really dark and violent moments to survive. I was watching an episode of, the reason I thought that is because I was watching an episode of Prehistoric Planet recently, which I think is a spectacular testament to research and computer animation and research already and storytelling, but it's also a spectacular testament to the true brutality of nature when it really comes down to it. There was one particular moment where a large raptor caught some sort of ostrich-like dinosaur and bit down on its neck, and then brought its children in to feed on it once it had been sort of paralyzed. And I was like, oh, savage. But beautiful, like it's something that happens, like hunting and then that becoming the feed for a family. And then I kind of thought about it a little longer, and I was like, oh man, there's no way that ostrichosaur died instantly. It probably just had its windpipe collapsed and probably sat there paralyzed and awake while an entire family of creatures ate it alive. And I was like, oh, holy shit, nature is savage. And then when you think about it, from that savagery of nature, we humans emerged as the dominant species, because when it comes to savagery, we are the absolute pinnacle. Early hunters used to just chase gazelles until the gazelles collapsed from heat exhaustion. The gazelles would run away, and then humans would just come loping up, just jogging up, and eventually it would just run these creatures ragged and then kill them. Can you imagine how terrifying a pack of creatures would be that just won't stop following you until you're dead? That's literally the plot from It Follows. And then we started to form societies, and we fought and we murdered and we killed each other too, and not just all the animals around us. And that's actually not innate to humans. Chimps have started year-long wars with between tribes. It's just nature and competition and the natural clash that individuals have with other groups, and in societies it just becomes violent at times, and then we got more sophisticated when we created better ways to kill each other up close, and then we got more sophisticated at killing each other from a distance, and then we got the ability to kill dozens of people at a distance, and then hundreds, and eventually we had enough firepower, and if you've watched Oppenheimer recently, we eventually built up enough firepower to destroy the entire human race, and only that was enough to stop all of the public fighting and wars and turn everything into sort of proxy wars and guerrilla conflict. And and it's not like we live in times of peace now. There's war in Ukraine. There's atrocities being committed everywhere from the U.S. border to the Middle East to the Uyghur in China, and numerous genocides in Southeast Asia and Africa. We don't yet live in a peaceful time, so it's sort of safe to say that the darkness, whatever that is, that capacity for great violence and terror, is still sort of baked into us somewhere. It didn't just go away, and I think as a society, collectively, we have grown more progressive, more thoughtful, more caring, more empathetic, but a big question that I kind of ask now, and this is bringing it back to where we put the darkness, is in the face of a savage world, do we have to cultivate a certain amount of our own darkness and savagery in order to face harsh realities? And I'm still not sure. I look to modern understandings of soldiers, of police officers, of other, like security guards, of the quote-unquote protectors that are designed to shield society. And we know about the struggles that they face for decades with PTSD and integration into society again. Not to mention, all the possibilities that militaries and police forces, have been documented to create, to lead to crime and oppression and corruption. So I don't think that that's a perfect system. And I don't know. Obviously, we as a species would like to believe that we're aiming to create a world where violence and darkness and savagery is no longer necessary. But I think it'll be a long time, if ever, before that sort of innate capacity for savagery evolves out of us as a species. I'll use myself as an example for kind of how this looks on a personal perspective. Like I like to think of myself as a joyful and empathetic creature. And I believe that in the world around me, like so much darkness is brought out of scarcity and desperation and pain. But I love to box. I love to watch fighting. I love wrestling. I love to turn everything into competition and really throw everything that I have into it, to celebrate the decadent violence of professional wrestling and stare in shock and awe at horror movies. And I think, what if, someone threatened my family or I was forced to stand up against forceful oppression? Like, would I be willing to do dark things? Would I be willing to fight savagery with savagery? And would it be helpful? I think it's another MLK quote, and it might not be him, so don't crucify me if I'm misattributing it, but, it's like darkness cannot drive out darkness, only light can do that. And it, eye for an eye makes the whole world blind. I believe that if you put good energy into the world and you don't let things escalate, then you are in your own small way removing that negative energy from the world. And in a perfect world, there would be no need for violence, but we live in a place where sometimes the only way to prevent tyranny is being willing to match that and match it with force and savagery of our own. You look at World War II, you look at some, wars for freedom and liberty, and it's kind of like, wow, sometimes you do have to, the Haitian Revolution, tons of revolutions all throughout South and Latin America. And the only, sometimes you have to use force to overthrow tyranny. And so ultimately that kind of brings me to the question I pose to all of us, which is, and this is something that I don't have an answer for, which is it better to sort of starve that capacity for innate darkness and violence, by not even engaging with it? Or is it better to channel it and express it through healthy mediums like competition and exercise and fiction? Because on one hand, if we do try to starve that darkness, does it ever actually dwindle? Or, it's like, does it just fester, and then in allowing it to escape through competition and talking about things, and does that release it from us? I'm not sure. It's not something fun to talk about, like darkness and unpleasantness by definition, but it is something that exists, and that's something that I kind of think about a lot in the Seventh Valkyrie. Is within all of us there exists great capacity for danger, violence, darkness, and it's sort of fun, interesting to explore what draws that out and where, moments, how in context and perspective it all changes. So it's a very complicated topic, but it's something that I wanted to think about, and it's something that's huge for the Seventh Valkyrie. And I kind of wanted to share a little bit of this thought in progress so you guys can, have your own opinions and think about it yourself. So anyway, those are the thoughts from me. I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend with that very potentially unsettling but potentially interesting set of thoughts, and have a good one, guys. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Seventh Valkyrie Podcast, which is brought to you entirely by fan support. To help keep the series ad-free, get early access and bonus features, browse gear and apparel, join the community, or watch the series come to life in living color, you can check out the links in the description.